Welcome to Heart Awakening interview series. Today we have Ted KUNTZ with us. I am thrilled to have you here, Ted. And Ted is the author of 2 books. Peace Begins With Me, which he wrote and published in 2005. And his newest book is 8 Weeks to a Better Relationship, which was published this year. So today we're going to talk a little bit more probably about Peace Begins With Me. Is that right, Ted?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what led you to write the first book, Peace Begins With Me?
Well, Peace Begins With Me really is about my journey with my son and what I learned having a child with severe disabilities. And what happened for me was that I spent many years being angry and afraid and resentful, and got to a place in my life where I knew that this was no way to continue life. I needed to somehow make peace with the life circumstance that I had. Mm-hmm. And the truth was I didn't know how to do that. What I realize is I think that unfortunately we're better prepared in our society to be angry or afraid or disappointed or hurt. And that our ability to be peaceful and joyful and happy is compromised for most of us. And it certainly was for me. But I had a very powerful event with my son one day when I realized I need to make peace with this life circumstance. I need to fall in love with the son that I have. And I began a very simple journey. And my journey is to spend as much of my waking moments in a place of peace and joy and happiness. And I literally experimented with all kinds of ideas that were part of the wisdom that's available in the community. And gathered some strategies that really made a difference in my life, mm-hmm. and began to discover that my life was more peaceful and more joyful. And I started to share that with people, and many people would say, you know, have I written about these? They would like me to write about it because they wanted to learn more. And so in 2005 I sat down and really compiled the things that I had been doing in terms of my day-to-day life and start sharing with people, and that's kind of how it happened.
Right. So you felt that you made the choice to become more peaceful?
I made the intention, and then it was about how do I do that. And probably the most simple idea that I came to understand is that I'm responsible for my happiness. Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for my sadness. I'm responsible for my joy, and I'm responsible for my anger. And I had lived most of my life acting as if somebody else was responsible. My son is quite sick, and I had a story that said I can't be happy until his medical condition improves. Mm-hmm. And so what I realized was that I had given away the responsibility and the power for my joy and my peace and my happiness to a situation that was outside of my control. And so probably the most important message that I came to understand was the importance of taking back the responsibility for my state of being, my way of being in the world. And I made a commitment to being peaceful and joyful, and I literally would, at the end of my day, I would stop and pause and say, so how did you do today? Where did you give away your joy? Where did you give away your peace? Where did you give away your happiness? What might you do different tomorrow as a way of holding on to it longer? And so, for example, I see, you know, I work with a lot of clients, and I see many people who will easily give away their joy. Someone doesn't signal that's in front of them in a line of traffic, and they'll give away their joy. And I say to them, you know, is your joy that you have that little regard for joy that you give it away that easily? Right. And they often are surprised at that kind of a question. It's about, but am I not right being angry? I say it's not about a question of who's right and who's wrong. It's a question about, are you going to give away your joy that easily? Are you going to give away your peace that easily? And my belief is that we can give it away, but we need to take ownership of that decision. Mm-hmm. And so my goal is to be peaceful and joyful and happy all the time.
So that must be difficult to do.
There are times it's difficult. I still have moments when the circumstances of this human condition challenge me to hold on to my joy. I saw a documentary a couple weeks ago that was about the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. And it just, I left that theater in despair about this human condition. And then I had to ground myself again and saying, okay, Ted, you can be angry, and you can be disappointed, and you can be afraid, and you can be all of those emotions, but will that serve this human condition by being angry, by being in despair? And the short answer is no. And so I can have a goal of trying to make a difference, but what I've learned is that when I put my energy into making change from a peaceful heart, from a joyful heart, it has more power, and people are drawn to you in a way they're not when you have an angry heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've read your book several times, Ted, and I really, really enjoy it. And one of the things that really got me was the way you start the book, which is the story of the two wolves. Would you like to share that with us?
Oh, I'd be glad to. So it's not my story. It's a story that came to me on my journey of trying to discover how to be peaceful. And it just resonated with me as so powerful. And the power really is in its simplicity. And it's a native story. And I love how the native people can capture deep wisdom so simply with a story. And this is a story about a grandfather who's walking with his grandson. And the two are walking in silence. And after a period of silence, the grandfather says to his grandson, "Grandson, there are two wolves that are fighting in my heart. And one wolf is angry and vindictive and wants to hurt others. And the other wolf is kind and compassionate and loving." And the grandson, after hearing the words of his grandfather, is filled with fear, and he says to his grandfather, "Grandfather, which wolf will win the battle of your heart?" And this beautiful, wise elder, he says, "My heart will be won by the wolf that wins the battle of every man's heart. It's the wolf I feed." And in this beautiful, simple way, it's like every day, every moment of every day, we have a choice. Will we feed the angry wolf or the joyful wolf? Will we feed the sad wolf or the happy wolf? And nowhere in there is there a judgment about one emotion being better than another, but it's more about which one will I choose to feed? Which one do I want to grow in my life? Mm-hmm. And again, I work with people all the time that say, "Ted, am I not justified being angry?" And I say, absolutely. You have all kinds of justifications being angry. The question is, does it serve you to hold that angry heart?
Right.
Now, I see some people that have this idea that if they let go of the angry heart, that somehow they will accept life the way it is and not be compelled to make change. And all I can say is that's not my experience. If anything, I feel like my efforts to help change and improve the human condition is fueled by this joy or this love or this compassion in a way that sustains me, in a way that anger doesn't. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that anger often burns people out. And if your motivation or the primary energy around your change is anger, you can't sustain that.
Mm-hmm. And what about being right? A lot of people want to be right.
Mm. Well, it's a question I often ask my clients. As I say, before we begin our work, I guess I've got a very simple question to ask you. I want to know whether you'd rather be right or would you rather be happy? Uh-huh. And again, that's a question that often surprises people, and they don't realize that in every moment they're making a decision about whether they want to be happy. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we think that it's important to be right, and we'll even give up our happiness in order to be right. And I've learned in the long run, I'd rather choose to be happy.
Mm-hmm. So can you be right and peaceful?
It depends if your way of being right is about making somebody wrong. And if you set yourself in that way, you're in a battle. But if you say, you know what, I believe that you have a perspective that's valuable and I want to honor it, and I think I have something to contribute, and I'd hope that you will honor that. I believe that we can deepen our wisdom together in a way that serves both of us. Mm-hmm. But my observation is that many of us are in battle with somebody else about, I'm right, therefore you must be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that when we make somebody out to be wrong, we diminish their contribution.
Mm-hmm. So you have been very, very outspoken, and you have a newsletter that you can find at www.peacebeginswithme.ca. And you talk about issues that are current issues, and you have your take on those issues. And what was the last newsletter that you wrote about? What was it about?
Well, I wrote about the Dalai Lama, and in a ceremony that he was in, there was a blind man. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
And he approached the blind man to see whether he had the opportunity to have some medical support, and the blind man explained that his condition was lifelong and that it was unlikely that he would ever see again. But as part of the journey of this blind man to come see the Dalai Lama, there was a fellow Buddhist monk that offered the blind man the gift of his eyes. And, you know, a beautiful, generous gift of a young man offering another young man his sight. And what I said in the book, or in the newsletter, is that it's not uncommon for us to donate eyes after somebody has died, but it's another thing to donate your eyes to another person when you're still alive.
Wow.
And the blind man thought about the generous offer from the monk and then declined the offer. And when they asked why he declined, he said, "My life has been very difficult to live with the blindness, and I can't imagine you having that struggle, and so thank you very much for your offer, but I'm going to refuse your offer." And what I wrote about is that from the outside nothing happened. The blind man continued to be blind. But to me, there's magic that happened. This beautiful gift of love and generosity got expressed. The blind man received it with an open heart, and then he gave back this gift of love and compassion by refusing the gift.
Wow.
Because he cared about the young monk. And so the story just resonated deeply with me, that there's this beautiful exchange of love and compassion and respect, even though on the outside it might look like nothing happened.
Right. And it sounds very peaceful as well. So would you equate peace with love, peace, kindness?
Well, you know, one of the tools that I have found helpful in my work is it's called the map of consciousness, that's developed by David Hawkins. And he rates, what he says is that every thought, every emotion has a vibration. And he rates emotions and thoughts on a scale between 0 and 1,000. And so if you look at his map, peace is about 600, love is about 800, forgiveness is 200, or whatever the numbers are. But he kind of gives this roadmap about what's the quality of this emotion. And what he says is the higher the emotion, the more benefit there is, and the stronger the vibration in terms of good that it will do. And at the bottom end of the scale is things like fear and shame and guilt and despair. And you know, what it says to me is that we all have an emotional presence about us. We have a vibration we carry. And the higher that we can hold this vibration, I believe the greater service we can be to our fellow human being. And it's again one of those things that may be invisible, but to me it's also still very powerful.
Yes.
And my goal is that I come into a room to heal the room. And I come in not with my words, but you come in with a vibration of peace and joy and kindness and compassion. And what I know is that people are changed by that vibration, even though no words may have been exchanged.
That's beautiful, Ted. And I know that you do that because I've seen you do that and I've experienced it myself. Okay, so this is Ted. As you can see, he's a very, very gifted psychotherapist. And again, his books are Peace Begins With Me and 8 Weeks to a Better Relationship. So thank you so much, Ted, for today. And I'm sure that everybody will get a lot of benefit from your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.